And if you, for anybody who hasn't seen it before, that the OK is on the top of the screen now. So the button to push. Yeah.
Thank you, Monica. And for those who are not regular attendees, Monica has been recording and putting all these classes up on a Google Drive for me for a long time. So thank you, Monica. And in that spirit, I wanted to say, I don't typically thank people directly for Donna, and so I just want to generally say to all of you that offer Donna that I really appreciate it, and it means a lot to me, and it's helpful. And so, it's both uplifting emotionally and materially. So it makes a difference. But it feels good to be able to offer a teaching without charging and letting people, just respond to that. And I know some people are like, give like a little bit every week or whatever you want to call it, they give something every week, and other people drop something in, and everybody can't afford to do that. And that's totally cool as well. That's the point of this kind of system that allows us to operate as a community that's supportive to everyone in the community. And on that note, I sort of I'm going to be getting. It's not going to really disable me, I don't think, but I'm going to be getting knee surgery in the fall, and it sort of had me thinking about offering another regular course, like something with a curriculum, unlike this randomness. And but I don't have any particular thing in mind to do a course. So if people want to at some point, let me know either, by email or putting things in the chat, or something you would like to have a course, maybe an 8 or 10 week course. Um, I'd be interested to hear thoughts and ideas. Okay. So with that, we can start our sitting period. And so we sit for about 20 minutes, and I will give some guidance during that time. And I will also allow for some quiet time so people can have some quiet and not be bothered by my voice. So I see like little movements as people adjust and settle into their posture as one might, as one probably should. And you can close your eyes or just lower your gaze. I like to kind of work my way up to the breath. So I don't usually start with focusing right on the breath, but rather just as soon as I'm kind of come into stillness, to just feel myself sitting, just feeling how you're holding your body and any sort of obvious sensations, and having a sense of being fully here in your body. So feeling the aliveness. There can be a pleasant sense of sort of weight, almost like feeling gravity when we stop and turn inward. And almost sense even before we start to feel concentrated, we can almost sense that there is this potential for calm within us. And then we start to use the breath as a focal point, with feeling the sensations of breath, the movements of breath. First, we try to get very clear and specific about what an in breath feels like, what an out breath feels like. Putting the attention right at a certain point, whether it's the tip of the nose or the belly, whether we're feeling the touch of air at the nose or the movement of the belly, letting the attention land there, rest there. And then we try to connect one breath to the next. In, out, in, out, in, out. Letting go of striving, letting go of doing, and just resting with the beautiful simplicity of breath. Thoughts may come and go, and we keep returning to the in breath, to the out breath. When you find yourself carried away with thoughts, You wake up from that, take a moment to see where your mind has been, just acknowledging that whatever that topic was, the content of mind, it was there because it's been there, because it's been running through your mind. We rarely think something just once, tend to repeat these cycles. So it just gives us a little insight into the concerns, the fears, the hopes, the resentments that are flowing through our minds, that are like a underground river that we usually don't see or feel. And we see that we can let go, don't have to be carried by these compulsive thought patterns. And we also don't have to be in conflict with them. It's okay to have these thoughts. It's just what human minds do. The more we interrupt them, the less destructive they are for us. And so again, we attune to the body and the breath. All right. Well, I can't help but think about all that I feel like we have been through, and many of you have been sitting and coming to this Tuesday a group for all the years that we've been doing it since March of 2020, and I was just reflecting on how this has been for me, and I think I imagine for all of us, a refuge. I've been every Tuesday morning I come down here, except when I've been traveling and sit in this spot. And if you look at the early videos, you'll see that it was a different colored. I was sitting on a couch, which is gone now. Everything keeps changing, right? And this chair is an old thing from my parents' house, so it's probably 80 years old at least. And but it's the same spot, and it's so far, for these years at least, we've been able to keep this going together and have that sense, I mean, impermanence becomes so obvious when um, you try to do the same thing over and over. And, it's like, oh, yeah, it's just the same thing. It's just Tuesday morning with Kevin, or Kevin, for me, it's Tuesday morning with the gang. But but every time it's different. And so but refuge is a way that we do try to seek not not something permanent, but something reliable, something that supports us and and helps us to transcend whether it's the madness or the even the elation of different moments, and to remember what's truly important and what's truly true, if you pardon the redundancy. Um, that we want to connect with ourselves and with love and with mindfulness and with wisdom, and we all know we need to constantly be reminded of these things. Our minds are so um, unreliable. Our minds love to just go off and get lost in all kinds of delusions and confusions. Uh, I'm sure many of you experience this. I mean, as someone who loves music, and I still consider myself a musician. I don't play a lot, but listen to music a lot. You sit down to meditate, and all this music starts playing in your head. You're like, oh, that's the price that I pay for listening to music all the time. But it's just that the movements of mind are so persistent. And and this practice, a core principle of this practice is to learn to sit in that intense flow of mind, and to not be overwhelmed by it, to find a refuge in it. And this is why refuge is actually not outside us. Refuge is inside us. When we take refuge in the Buddha, according to Ajahn Chah and his followers, we are really taking refuge in our own potential, our own ability to be present, to be awake. And when we take refuge in the Dharma, we are taking refuge really in our own wisdom, our own insight into reality, into what is true. And when we take refuge in Sangha, we're also taking refuge within ourselves, even though there's a quality of community in Sangha. But as Ajahn Amaro talks about it, Sangha is also the the pure heart that manifests out of being awake to what is true, refuge in the Buddha and the Dharma, arouses this um, natural inclination to live in a wholesome manner, to live sober, clean, you know, truthful, kind, those to live by those principles. And that, it's that so that recovery is a refuge, right? I mean, refuge recovery is, there's a reason why it's called that. And it is a tremendous refuge. I was talking on the retreat in Indiana about how I think of sobriety as a sacred state, apart from the I don't drink or use, I don't use intoxicants, but that there's much larger and much fuller meaning of sobriety. And I say sobriety. I mean, I'm talking about recovery, but it's clear that recovery is a sacred state. But actually, I think sobriety itself has a sacredness within it. And I just mean being clean and sober, not using that. That there's it's like it's just the foundation of this spiritual potential that recovery opens up. Um, but I've come to feel, the I think this also came up at one point in Indiana, that this idea that, oh, that the researchers want to find a cure for alcoholism or a cure for addiction, right? Which of course always turns out to be a drug, which is, has its own irony built in. But more important, the underlying sort of their underlying belief is that we are making this terrible sacrifice because we don't get to drink, or we don't get to use, you know, and like they want to, save us, cure us of our disease so that we can, really be happy and not have to live this miserable life where we don't get to drink and take drugs. It's such a joke for us, right? It's like, what? You don't understand. You don't understand the sacred quality of this state, of this commitment to being awake and aware. And this is one of the reasons why Buddhism and recovery are so, connected, is that they both have this commitment to be here in this reality. I'm gonna live with it. I'm gonna deal with it however it arises. I'm not going to try to run from it. And of course, our minds will run from it. We see it when we meditate. Our minds try to run from it anyway, right? We don't need drugs, and there are lots of other ways we can do that, and that's fine. That's just human, right? But there's something about this commitment to, like, I'm not gonna take this shit that really is like gonna dose me and it's gonna really I'm just not. I don't need it. I don't want it. It's not life. It's a facsimile of life. Yeah. Well, I actually had a couple other things I had planned to talk about, but you know how it is. You know, let me meditate for 20 minutes and a Dharma talk arises in my mind. Uh, um, I actually thought might read something for you that I wrote recently, and I want to apologize a little bit uh, for a while there. I was going through the book more than mindfulness, and I kind of fell off from doing that. At some point, I may get back there, but um, you know, I just do what sort of arises on Tuesdays. But I've been Yeah, I'm doing some writing, and actually something else I wanted to mention before I read this. For those of you who have been hanging out with me for these years, I spent a couple years working on a project we can call the book about the Anapanasati Sutta, which is the Sutta on mindfulness of breathing, and I have put that aside uh, because I hadn't for various reasons, but I am planning to, excuse me, I'm planning to just put it as a PDF on my website. So for those who might have been interested in like, well, when is that going to come out? Like, just be something you can download for free and um, just be available. And part of that is because I had concerns about whether I knew enough about that sutta to publish a book about it. Be when you're an author, that implies that you are an authority, and I sort of had some concerns about that. But nonetheless, I think there's a lot in there that you guys would enjoy and benefit from and appreciate. Um, and so I'll let you know when I put that together, and I'll just put a link on my website for it. So anyway, now I'm writing something else, and we'll see if this ever comes out. I just write. I don't um, make commitments to what's going to happen with it. And I've probably mentioned this. I'm writing about what I call and what can be called the felt experience, which is a term in and of itself that takes quite a bit of defining. But I'm just going to read this part that's kind of about the hindrances and how we integrate awareness of the hindrances. Focusing on, and this comes after a section that was, what was it? I don't know. Anyway, you'll see that I'm referring to something earlier. Focusing on the felt experience isn't just about getting through tough emotional moments or even taking in uplifting ones. And those feelings aren't always emotional per se. Let me give some examples. One of the most common lists we encounter when learning Buddhist meditation is the five hindrances: sensual desire, aversion, sloth and torpor, restlessness and worry, and doubt. Some of these have obvious emotional components. Hate is a form of aversion, for example, and worry is a form of anxiety. But some do not. I don't think sensual desire or sloth are emotions. Typo. However, every one of these hindrances causes feelings. There's a particular way I was taught to meditate that uses that fact to develop insight. Here's how. We make mindfulness of these qualities the focus of our practice, mindfulness of the five hindrances. Each time we have a thought, we notice if it is a thought of desire or aversion. We'll soon discover that most thoughts are either thoughts of desire or aversion. Then, instead of immediately returning to the object of attention, typically the breath, we well, I did not read this before. Sorry. What we do is add a third step to this process beyond noticing the thought and returning to the present moment. So we notice the thought, we notice that we're thinking, we notice that it's a thought of desire or aversion. And then we add this third step. We don't just come right back to the breath. In between those two things, in between noticing the thought and coming back to the breath, we tune into the felt experience. So what does it feel like to have a thought of desire? And what we quickly discover is that desire and aversion cause unpleasant feelings. It doesn't feel good to be lost in craving or anger, longing or resentment. It's uncomfortable. What we are seeing in that moment is the second noble truth, the truth of the cause of suffering. We now understand on a visceral, felt level what the Buddha was saying. When we then let go of that thought, so what I mean is we feel on a visceral level that suffering is caused by craving and aversion. It's not just an intellectual thought now. We're meditating, we notice the thought, we notice how that thought of craving or aversion feels, and that it's uncomfortable. And that's dukkha. So now it's like, oh, that's the second noble truth, right? That craving causes suffering. Okay, I'm experiencing that here and now. When we then let go of that thought, we feel the relief. And that is the third noble truth, the end of suffering. We feel when we really let go, okay, I'm not going to go down that road of anger or that fantasy of pleasure. I'm going to come back to the breath. And that's that moment that we all get from time to time, at least, of like, letting go. Oh, I'm back here. I'm present. So that's the felt experience of the third noble truth, that when I let go of craving, suffering ends. And when we hear the Four Noble Truths, it can sound like this very lofty thing, the end of suffering comes when we let go of all desire. Okay, well, maybe for somebody, like, they get to that point where it's like that never happens again. But the real life version of this is that we feel the dukkha, and we feel that dukkha end momentarily. It's not over forever, right? Obviously. But we start to put this all together. So let me read a little bit more. And then we realize that it is through the process of following the Noble Eightfold Path that this unfolded, which is the fourth noble truth. So we realize that if we step back and reflect on it, what just happened? Oh, I applied mindfulness, concentration, and effort, along with right view and right intention, to my present moment experience. And through that process, I saw the suffering. I saw what was causing it. I saw how it ends when I stop acting on it, arousing it. And I'm realizing, oh, that happened through the Eightfold Path. So now that's the fourth noble truth, the Eightfold Path. So now I've experienced in real time the truth of the Four Noble Truths. Again, it's not theoretical. We can read about the truth, we can hear it talk, and it's like, oh, that's very inspiring to hear that. Oh, yes, I understand that. Yeah, I see what you're talking about. That's great. Good Dharma talk. That's not the point. I guess it doesn't do you any good to hear good Dharma talk unless it becomes integrated. This whole process of developing insight then depends upon being attuned to the felt experience. Insight in this sense isn't simply an idea, something we read in a book or hear in a Dharma talk. It is experienced within us here and now. This understanding then begins to permeate our thinking and our approach to life. The truth that letting go is the path to freedom is no longer theoretical or philosophical. It becomes an intuitive response to life. It is why understanding the felt experience is so key to our spiritual practice. So, that's not finished. I just spewed that out Sunday afternoon. But I really think this is like a key thing. And I've talked about this before and give Dharma talks on this sort of topic, but not so much framing it around the felt experience. But I think that is really key. But this final idea, though, I think is one to appreciate, and again to see that for for us, for those in recovery, we've already had this experience. We've already, we already know for ourselves that letting go, at least of certain things, is the path to freedom. It's the path that we got to the freedom that we have as being free from addiction. And so it doesn't take a lot of convincing for us to buy into the Four Noble Truths and to understand on this larger level that like letting go is the way to freedom, right? And so we start to integrate this, right? This is what spiritual practice, a lived spiritual practice is that we start to integrate this into the way we operate in the world, whether it's in the workplace or, out in public or in our intimate relationships and our friendly, in all kinds of situations. We're regularly confronted with the challenge of like, should I, will I get what I want? Will I find happiness or in comfort and peace through striving and through anger, through efforts at control, or through letting go? And we have learned that in many, many situations, not every situation, but in many, many situations, we really get a lot of relief by just letting go. And so it's not like, oh, I know how to meditate. I'm good at paying attention to my breath. It's like that's, not a skill that's going to carry you that far in life. But the skill of letting go will carry you a long way. And so I think it's useful for us to reflect on this. I think that people in recovery intuitively know this, but I think it's helpful to put it in the framework of the Four Noble Truths in Buddhism that's so explicit and, takes this process apart in a way that we can see it for ourselves and both feel it and experience it and understand it internally and through the felt experience and intellectually so that it becomes an integrative and holistic, if you will, experience that doesn't depend on us remembering something intellectually because we feel it already naturally. We naturally let go, but also is not so amorphous that we only feel it because we also intellectually understand it. So it becomes very much the guiding principle and guiding intuition, the guiding uh, feeling of our lives. It sort of operates on all these levels for us. And this is the preciousness of the Four Noble Truths. So that was what I thought I was going to talk about. So there you go. You get two Dharma talks in one for the price of none. Um, well, you wish you were taking notes. I didn't catch every step. Yeah. So you're already doing it. So it's not that you don't necessarily have to, but you don't necessarily have to have this written down and memorized. Just to finish a sentence for once. Um, but start with the four. What are the Four Noble Truths? The truth of suffering, the truth of the cause of suffering, the truth of the end of suffering, and the truth of the way to the end of suffering. So that's a pretty well-known, to say the least, formula. And then you have to then you examine what those are really referring to, and then you connect them to your meditative experience. When you're meditating, you have moments, probably more than one, that are sort of unpleasant. And if you examine why they're unpleasant, you will find, so that's one, that's the suffering. Then two, if you examine why they are unpleasant, you will see that there's something going on typically in your mind that is either grasping at something or trying to push something away. So that's the second truth. Oh yeah, there I go. Blah, blah, blah. It's you're thinking, but what are you thinking? Well, you're thinking something in this one of these realms. When I let go of that, when I'm like, oh, I'm thinking, let me come back to my breath. No, not every time, but enough times to make it, convincing. You'll notice, oh yeah, that's a relief. Let me just be back to breath. That's better. And it usually over a period of meditation, that this might become more manifest more often. That is the pleasant experience of letting go of the thought will start to kind of, it starts to work. Yeah. Now I realize that that's the thing we're all chasing in meditation, right? Is that pleasant? We're all really chasing the third noble truth, the end of suffering. And it doesn't always come in this simple and systematic way as I'm describing. However, that's the potential. That's what we're working toward, and it is there. It's a reality that's virtually, I know most of you have experienced it at one time or another. So you experience that, and you're like, oh yeah, right. When I stop obsessing or whatever, the thinking is, and just let go, feels better. It's a relief. That's peace. It's the third noble truth. And then the fourth noble truth, really, in this framework, is just a reflection on how did I get here? You know, how did I, and it really, the reflection is how did I get from the second noble truth to the third noble truth? How did I get from the suffering and the attachment? How did I let go? In other words, how did I let go and achieve the third noble truth of the end of suffering? And that's we that's the path. I got here by following the path. How did I get sober? I got sober by working the steps. I mean, that's simplistic again, but the same kind of idea. It's like, oh yeah, and that's why I keep working the steps because I realize, oh, that's helped me get sober. It's helped me to stay sober. That's really good. And so, with Buddhism, it's like, how did I let go of my obsessive thinking? Oh, I practice the Eightfold Path. Okay, I probably ought to do that. Maybe I should keep that up. And and of course, I know I throw that phrase around a lot. The Eightfold Path is deep and wide, and um, it you can keep studying it and practicing it and exploring it. It's not something like, okay, got it. No, it's the books. Many books are written about just mindfulness, just one step on the Eightfold Path, and I find it just really uh, endlessly fascinating. So we have a few minutes left if anybody wants to chime in. And there we go. If you want to speak and you're having trouble with your interface, just unmute yourself and speak. Thank you for the applause, Eleanor. I appreciate
Hi.
it. Hello, hello.
Hello.
Hi, Ann.
Um, Hi. So yeah, I just had it's a great structure template. You've talked about this. Oh, probably a few times.
Yeah.
Um, but it's so good it's just so collecting. It like helps gather the mind, you know. But I was thinking about because you mentioned wise intention, wise view, effort, concentration, mindfulness. And then of course I go, well, right action, right speech, right livelihood. Where does that fit in does that fit in the structure in a moment? I mean, I think action and speech you could talk about. You know what I mean?
Which one? I started reading the chat. I'm sorry. So that happens.
Too much stuff
Honest
going on the
confession from the Dharma
screen there.
teacher.
That's
Thank you,
fine.
dear.
That's
Yes.
fine.
Which did you say? Right livelihood?
Right, livelihood.
Yeah.
Like action and speech, you can,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, I
So,
mean, I guess I would just generally say that, our mind states uh, are conditioned by many factors, uh, some of which are here and now, and some of which are over time. So, if I'm going to go to work later on at the slaughterhouse, I, my mind might not be as peaceful and kind as if I was going to go to work at the Dharma Center, you know.
yeah, yeah. That's a cause of, yeah,
Yeah,
right. That would, hmm
yeah.
okay. Yeah. Yeah, thanks. I've been thinking about you a lot the last 9, 10 days.
Yeah, about
I've been
what?
thinking about you a lot the last
Oh,
9, 10 days.
oh, were you sitting? Were you on retreat?
No, I wasn't. I just
Oh,
in just life happening and
okay.
sending metta.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
I'll also say, like, who is it? Christopher Titmuss, I think, would define right livelihood as more broadly as lifestyle. So he brings in like um, a relationship to the environment, like and whether being vegetarian and sort of how you live. If you're, uh, I mean, that's one way of expanding it, perhaps.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you're setting up the conditions for a sit
Yeah,
for, you know, compassion and wisdom to arise.
yeah, yeah,
So the
right.
lifestyle really, it does make a difference
Yeah, yeah,
for
it
sure.
does. Yeah, because it's those are all like expressions of your mind anyway, right? Who am I and what do I believe and how do I live and how do I think about the world? How do I relate to the world?
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and certainly just whether your lifestyle, whether your livelihood is based on greed or not, that's which is very common, right?
Mhm.
I mean, certainly we have jobs in order to make money, so it's not a big step to go from that to trying to make as much money as you possibly can, you know. And the next thing you know, you're like on the path to billionaire dukkha, you know, which I think is really one of the most horrible forms of dukkha, you know. So, so I like
Yeah.
to point out that being a billionaire is it's like um, somebody who's really obviously an alcoholic. Like you don't really have to diagnose them. Just have to know one thing. Like maybe you have a subscription to a vodka you have a case of vodka delivered every week. I know you're an alcoholic. Like, I don't need any more information. You're a billionaire. I know you're yeah, you're an addict. You're addicted to money. I don't have to get any more information. You're
The power, pain,
yeah. It's all
deep.
dukkha. I mean, it's just so ugh. Yeah. I mean, that's why, politicians are so problematic, who wants to go through all that? Who's willing to go through the dukkha of running for president? I mean, that's got a horrible, horrible thing to have to do. I doubt there's anybody here who'd be willing to do it. If somebody came up to you and said, oh, we're going to nominate you for president, you'd be like, no, 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 please don't, no, don't do that to me. Anyway, well, we've passed the hour, and I don't see any other hands shooting up. So I will, yeah, I I affirm that my day is committed to getting so getting the old videos up on YouTube. And just to say that I used to make it, it was a much more tedious process if I put a link to every separate YouTube on my website. Then I have to go, it's, it's not difficult, it's just tedious. And so what I have done now is just put a link on my website to my YouTube channel. And then all I have to do, I don't have to do anything on my website. All I have to do is upload everything onto YouTube, which is enough. It'll take me several hours. And I know this is, at, I have gotten to the point in my career where I'm not as willing to do things that I don't feel like doing as I once was. So some people call me lazy. Well, as Joe Walsh said, they say I'm lazy, but it takes all my time. Life's been good to me. My favorite song, really. It's got so many Dharma teachings in it.
Kevin, it's Eleanor talking. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, Eleanor.
Cool. I've been having weird internet, but I just wanted to thank you so much for this topic because it serves me in my life right now. It brings together some elements of what I've been doing with my recovery and with my Dharma study that I'm grateful for. I think I told you that I've been sitting with a group of people here in Grass Valley in Nevada City
Yeah.
using Recovery Dharma book.
Hmm.
And we're reading through each week a bit of the second edition of the book. Right now, we're reading through the Eightfold Path, the sections on the Eightfold Path.
Hmm.
And last week, particularly, it was right intention. And I was just realizing how I read through the first edition of that book dozens of times, and how in the setting that I'm in right now with a new group of people, how I realized the depth of my understanding of what these things are, and how do I share that with this group of neophytes, new in recovery, newly connecting the Dharma. It's just it brings it together to in a way that I feel like I can speak about my own experience without sounding like, well, the right way to understand this is because there's a million right ways to understand it, and we just have our own. So if we share our own, as you've been doing so beautifully, it enriches the understanding of other people in the moment. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Eleanor. It's very nice to see you always.
It's very nice
Grateful
to
for your
meet you.
presence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, it's a new day. It's a new life. And donate and volunteer. And we're going to keep this goodness rolling in the world. Don't let the bastards get you down. Blessings. Love you guys.
Love you too.
Thanks, Kevin.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Oh, Abigail, all the hearts.
Bye-bye.